Feeling good. All right, cool. Hi. Okay.
Sherman, everybody.
Thanks. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Joy of Functional Coding. I'll be your host, Anna Sherman, like Brett said. And I'm excited to dive into the fascinating world where creativity meets code. In this talk, we will look to Bob Ross for nuggets of wisdom for your coding journey. And we'll also explore how functional programming principles intertwine with his timeless wisdom. So grab your paintbrushes and keyboards and let's dive in. So before we get started, I want to introduce myself a little bit more to you guys and explain why Bob Ross. So I have been a software engineer for about 10 years now, and I'm currently a senior software engineer and team lead at a company called Zillion, like Brett said. And Zillion is a B2B2C insurtech that leverages the power of Elixir to provide customers with real-time protection using the integration at point of sale. So at Zillion, I get the pleasure of writing production Elixir code every day with an absolutely incredible team of engineers that are in here. And my journey to where I am today included a large self-taught portion. I was pursuing a math degree, thinking I'd be like a statistician on like an anthropological study. I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I took my first intro to computer science class, and I was hooked. I decided to drop the anthropology minor I was pursuing, and I took a directed study in Java my senior year instead. Upon graduating, my parents sat me down at a Chili's and was like, so now what are you going to do? You have only 2 computer science classes. You're going to be an engineer? And I was like, yes. I told them I was going to take the next few months to try and learn as much as I could, and then maybe find like a smallish company to work for, because I was a little bit nervous about like trying to jump straight into like Silicon Valley out in the West Coast, and then maybe eventually make my way out there. And I pretty much did that. I collected as many online resources as I could, and I made myself like a little mini boot camp. And then after that, I managed to get hired at a company. That was pretty cool. And I proceeded to absorb as much knowledge as I could from all the engineers around me. I asked tons of questions and probably annoyed the shit out of like a lot of my coworkers, but I filled in a lot of gaps at that time. Gaps in knowledge, in process, in how to Google things in a useful way, which I'm still working on that skill. And after 2 years, that company shut down for reasons, and I found myself on the job hunt, where I connected with the wonderful people at Carbon 5. And that became my new home. There, I leveled up in ways I didn't realize I needed leveling up on. Since Carbon 5 was a consultancy, I had the opportunity to work in several different languages and develop into a polyglot. So yeah, if you're unfamiliar with that term, it just means I got to know a bunch of languages. And in addition to that, I had to switch domains every 3 to 6 months, which sharpened me in a lot of different ways. And in growing in that way, it caused me to look at coding problems differently. It helped me figure out what exactly was decoration and styling specific to a language, and what was like core problem solving that can apply to any language. So I'm so grateful for the time that I got to spend there, not only for the work, but also the relationships that I developed. Carbon 5 was also very community oriented, and I got to develop a passion for helping and encouraging other people into the industry. This experience paved the way to Zillion for me, where I've gotten to help build the code base and the team from scratch, and have been able to watch the outcome of my architectural decisions, for better or for worse. And time again, our team has reflected on our choice to use Elixir, and the conclusion every time has been that it was absolutely the right choice for us. It has allowed us to easily refactor when necessary, and sometimes it's been very necessary, and scale almost effortlessly as our business has grown over the last 5 years. Beyond the technical aspects of Zillion, I feel so privileged to be a part of a team that is not only incredibly smart, but are also very empathetic and hilarious. So that's me in terms of my technical journey. So who the heck is Bob Ross? And you're probably going to get more Bob Ross trivia than you signed up for here, but hang in there. So Bob was an iconic American painter and television host, best known for his soothing demeanor, signature perm, and instructional TV show, The Joy of Painting. Bob was born on October 29th, 1942 in Daytona Beach, Florida. After suffering a horrible woodworking accident that claimed one of his fingers, Bob joined the U.S. Air Force and served as a medical records technician, which influenced his calm and disciplined behavior. He studied under a guy named William Alexander and developed his wet-on-wet oil painting technique under his tutelage, which allowed for quick, easy, and expressive paintings. And he became a certified instructor and eventually started his own painting classes. Bob gained widespread fame as the host of The Joy of Painting, a television program that aired from 1983 to 1994 on PBS. In the show, he demonstrated his painting techniques while imparting words of encouragement and wisdom to viewers. In a 30-minute segment, Bob could go from a blank canvas to a complete painting in real time. Despite his passing in 1995, Bob Ross's legacy endures through the reruns of The Joy of Painting and his tutorials that you can find on like YouTube and Hulu and Netflix. His calming presence and positive outlook have made him a beloved figure in pop culture. His image and likeness have been used in a lot of things, and so it's kind of started this whole new generation of fans that probably weren't even alive when he was alive, which is pretty cool. And beyond that, Bob was also very passionate about wildlife conservation and supported various charitable causes during his lifetime. So that's who Bob Ross is. My love for Bob Ross started when I was very young, actually. I spent a good bit of time watching him with my grandfather, and then it wasn't until I was an adult before I became a full like Bob Ross apostate. And my husband got me this like painting kit one Christmas. It came with like a DVD and some paintbrushes and some paint. And I painted my first mountain scene in Happy Trees, and I was absolutely hooked. Same kind of feeling I had when I first started coding. I was like, oh, this is great. This is so fun. So yeah, that's why I love Bob Ross. And then my friends and family, since they noticed that I was like painting a lot, started to get me some really fun Bob Ross themed things like these, one of which was this book, which has led us here to this talk. I was reading through this book and I was like, wow, a lot of this stuff can apply to like people trying to learn how to code and actual functional programming principles. And so I thought it would be really fun to do a talk on this. And actually, shout out to, I don't even know if he's in the room, Amos. He had given a talk about how he creates his talks, and it got me thinking about this, and so I put this one together. Okay, so whether you are just starting out or are a seasoned senior engineer, we're always on a journey to learn more and to solve hard problems. So imposter syndrome is a very real thing. I think people have mentioned it today too. And even though I've been doing this a while, I know the things I've built, I know the problems I've solved, I still catch myself feeling like an imposter sometimes, and I'd wager a bet that most of you have as well. So let's look to Bob to see what he has to say about this. And I think he would say anyone can code, because he liked to say, hint, hint, if you've never seen an episode, anyone can paint, anyone can code. So the secret to doing anything is believing you can do it. Anything that you believe you can do strong enough, you can do. Anything as long as you believe. Talent is a pursued interest. Anything you're willing to practice, you can do. Isn't that fantastic? I knew you could do it. There's an artist hidden at the bottom of every single one of us. To me, all of these point to talent not being something you're born with, but rather something that people practice and work towards. Often I say while that what we do as engineers can be hard. I don't think we're special. I'm sorry, that's another hot take. Like, we are really smart people, but I don't think what we do is like impossible for other people to learn. Like, I think anyone can do what we do. And so when you're having a moment when you think like you don't belong here, remember, no one actually belongs here. We all just work really hard to be here. And now you might say, okay, Anna, that's great. But what I've been doing, I've been trying to do the things that other people are doing in the field, and I can't seem to get it. Doesn't that mean like this probably isn't for me? Well, I think Bob's got some stuff to say about that. And I think everyone learns in different ways. Bob thinks so too. So if we all painted the same way, what a boring world it would be. We each see the world in our own way. That's what makes it such a special place. Trees grow in all kinds of ways. They're not all perfectly straight. Not every limb is perfect. Trees don't grow even. They don't grow straight. Some are tilted, some are bent, but they're all beautiful. Take your time. Speed will come later. Often when I'm helping new engineers into the field, the one thing I encourage them in is to not get discouraged if they can't get something right away. Because everyone's different, everyone has different learning styles and different ways that they think about things. Like, our whole lives change our perspective on how we see things, right? Like, every event that we've had has made us the individuals that we are. So often people ask me how I learned and what I know, and I tell them that story about how I made my own little mini boot camp, but I don't expect that to work for everyone. I will say, try making a schedule. If that schedule doesn't work for you, try something different. Don't give up, because everyone's different, and what works for me might not work for you, and that's okay. And here we can see Bob feels the same way. And the speed thing, I think, is pretty important. Like, it's okay at the beginning to figure it out. I know there's a lot of pressure to get in there, and I think we were talking about how do we have someone be 100% the first day, and it's it's okay. Take your time, figure it out, and then the speed thing will come later. So don't worry about being the fastest at what you're doing right now or being perfect in it, because we need to not be afraid to fail. This is the biggest piece of advice. If I could only give one piece of advice to someone in a coding journey, it would be this. We've been taught our whole lives, through our education specifically, that failure is a negative thing. But I don't see what people normally call failure as a negative thing, but rather as a value add. And Bob agrees. Anything we don't like will turn into a happy little tree or something. We don't make mistakes, we just have happy accidents. This is probably one of Bob's most famous quotes. And in it, he emphatically denies that mistakes even exist in the process. That's not a real thing. We don't make mistakes here. Sometimes you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your masterpieces. You have to allow the paint to break to make it beautiful. Don't be afraid to scrape the paint off and do it again. This is the way you learn. Trial and error, over and over, repetition. That's when you experience joy, when you have no fear. Bob really emphasized getting over a fear of failure, and I found that in my career, that was a huge thing that I needed to learn in order to progress forward. And not only that, I needed someone to tell me that, it's okay to fail. So I preach this kind of thought process often, because I never know when I'm gonna run into someone who hasn't heard that yet or figured that out for themselves, and they're trying to be perfect and they're feeling like a failure and it's driving them down. It's okay. Take it and kind of change your perspective and see it as a learning experience. So, every day at work I fail to find a solution to my problems. And so I have to be comfortable with it. It's absolutely necessary. You fail, you have your red test until they're green again, and then you're okay, cool, and you keep moving on. So it's always an opportunity to learn, and I have found that retraining my perspective on failure to be a learning opportunity has been to my benefit throughout my journey. And to that point, perspective matters. I kind of hinted at this a little bit when we were discussing like being comfortable with failure, and the approach that I took that might work for you, because again, we're all different, and so we all learn differently. But it's something that people call positive reframing, which is just like a fancy way of like changing your perspective to look at something that's negative as positive. So studies have shown that people who practice positive reframing have reduced stress, become more resilient, become more open-minded, attract new opportunities, have stronger relationships, are more prone to respond to situations rather than react to them, and have a greater sense of gratitude and appreciations for the things in their lives. All of which these things I think would be very helpful to a well-rounded engineer. And Bob was a big proponent of finding positive perspectives. So I don't know, can everyone see that quote okay? But yeah, this is from a clip from an episode, and it's one of my absolute favorite Bob Ross moments. So basically, there was a colorblind man that was like, I can't paint. I can't see color. How can I paint? And he's like, I'm going to show you how you can paint. And instead of allowing someone to accept something that they saw as a deficiency holding them back, Bob chose to demonstrate that sometimes the things we think matter don't matter, like being able to see the colors correctly. And the only thing that's kind of keeping you moving forward is yourself. Like, change your perspective, find a way through. So this one is, we spend so much of our life looking but never seeing. All it takes is just a little change of perspective and you can begin to see a whole new world. So TLDR, your perspective is a tool that you can use to help you move forward in your engineering journey and can make it more delightful. So it's kind of like a palette knife. Has anyone ever painted in here, like oil paintings? Okay, so like the palette knife like lets you kind of like lay on like this delicate layer of paint sometimes. It adds texture and depth. So having this perspective like adds more dimension to your life. And so if perspective is a palette knife, then community is a 2-inch brush. And if you've ever watched an episode of The Joy of Painting, you know that Bob always uses a 2-inch brush for everything. It's so important for his paintings and his process. And that's how I see community. I would not be here without community today. And yeah, so I think it's super important. So friends are the most important commodity in the world. Even a tree needs a friend. That may be the true joy of painting, when you share it with the other people. I really believe that's the true joy. And I love that we were talking about community earlier, and Frank even hit it on that too. Like, it's so, so, so important. Because the relationships that I built in my career have sharpened me both technically, but also emotionally. The deep sense of trust that I have with my team, and those I work with makes my problem solving so much easier. My community gives me the grace and the space and removes like the fear of looking like a fool. Maybe I do look like a fool, but they're very nice to me about it. And they allow me to work through ideas and thoughts that I have, and also challenge me to look at things differently. So I would definitely not be half the developer I am today without the community that I've had around me. Okay, so now that we've seen some advice from Bob that helps us on our journeys as developers, let's see how it aligns with the fundamental tenets of functional programming. So let's start with pure functions. Pure functions is a concept that aligns perfectly with Bob Ross's approach to painting. In functional programming, pure functions are functions that always produce the same output for the input and have no side effects. Pure functions provides us with predictability and testability in our code, much like how Bob meticulously plans his paintings before putting brush to canvas. We can trust that a pure function will behave the same way every time it's called, regardless of external factors. Pure functions offer us a multitude of benefits in our programming endeavors, much like Bob's approach to painting offers us lessons in craftsmanship and attention to detail. One such benefit is code quality. With pure functions, we can trust that our code is free from unintended side effects and hidden dependencies, leading to cleaner and more manageable code. So in this example, we have a Bob Ross painting module with a function to paint a sunset. Notice how all the data needed for the painting is explicitly passed in as arguments. Oh, it was looking weird from this angle. I've never looked at code from this angle. It just looked weird for a second. I was like, sorry. So there are no external variables or mutable state changes. By encapsulating our logic and within pure functions, we create code that is easier to understand, refactor, and optimize. It's like building layers of paint on a canvas, each stroke contributing to the overall masterpiece without disturbing the harmony of the composition. Okay, let's just mix up a little color, just a happy little color. Now this was a little bit of a stretch. So by leveraging pure functions, we create code that is easier to reason about, debug, and test. It's like mixing colors on a palette with precise measurements, ensuring consistent results with each stroke of the brush. I aspire to create tranquility, a peaceful atmosphere, to take people away from their everyday problems and frustrations. Make it simple but significant. A tree cannot stand straight if it has a crooked trunk. Pure functions create a peaceful atmosphere for developers. They do not have to worry about the frustrations of accidentally mutating the state of a piece of data that they're dealing with, which overall reduces the cognitive overhead that they have to manage. So now let's dive into the technical beauty that is higher order functions. In functional programming, higher order functions are like and now this is like an overused metaphor, but the Swiss Army knife of code. They can take other functions as arguments or return functions as results. So imagine if Bob Ross could dynamically choose which element to paint based on the scene. Well, in functional programming, we can achieve just that. Higher order functions empower us to write more flexible and modular code. So take a look at this paint scene function. It accepts a scene and a painter function as arguments. The painter function, such as Misty Mountain or Happy Lake, is a higher order function that dynamically determines what to paint based on the scene. By utilizing higher order functions, we elevate our code to new levels of abstraction and reusability. They allow us to express complex behavior in a concise and elegant manner. Much like Bob Ross layers colors on canvas, we can layer functions in our code to create dynamic and powerful solutions. If it's not what you want, stop and change it. Don't just keep going and expect it to get better. In painting, you have unlimited power. You have the ability to move mountains and bend rivers. Higher order functions really do give us, as engineers, so much power and flexibility when we code. So Bob would be super into that. Now let's look at the serene world of immutability. In functional programming, immutability basically refers to the concept that once a variable is created, its value cannot be changed in memory, only copied. So immutability provides us with safety and predictability in our programs. We trust that once data is created, it will remain unchanged, reducing the risk of unattended side effects. Consider this Bob Ross canvas module. We have functions to paint on a canvas and add color to it. Notice that each function returns a new canvas instead of modifying an existing one. This is the essence of immutability in action. By embracing immutability, we create code that is easier to reason about and less prone to bugs. It's like painting on a canvas that will never change or fade, providing us with a sense of tranquility in our programming journey. Okay, so finding a Bob Ross quote on immutability was very difficult because he's all about flexibility and making but if you squint and tilt your head a little bit, this next quote maybe goes to immutability. I don't know. We're just gonna go with it. So shh, be still. The mountain knows. So while not explicitly about immutability, this quote reflects Bob's reverence for nature's enduring presence and wisdom. It suggests a quiet acceptance and appreciation of the natural world's unchanging essence, inviting viewers to find solace in the constancy of the mountains amidst life's uncertainties. So finally, let's take a look at how Bob might describe the sense of the ease of functional programming in comparison to OOP. Gosh, that was a mouthful. Okay. We begin with paint and brush. The object is to capture the dream quickly while it is still alive. These things live right in your brush. All you have to do is shake them out. Just let your imagination go. You can create all kinds of beautiful effects, just that easy. We have no limits in our world. We're only limited by your imagination. You can do anything here. The only prerequisite is that it makes you happy. Since we don't really know where this goes, and I'm not really sure we care, which I feel like in Elixir, like everything's a function. In functional programming, like you have a lot of freedom to set everything up. And yes, constraints, I do agree. We should have some constraints in here around this, but it lets you easily change things without having to deal with like the labyrinth that is OOP. All it takes is just a little change of perspective, and you begin to see a whole new world. And yes, I realized that I already used this quote, but it felt kind of perfect for like functional programming, like shifting into the functional programming viewpoint from OOP, like it opens up a whole new world for you. So functional programming allows an engineer to quickly create a working concept without the weight of state management across dependents and dependencies. I think that this freedom allows us as engineers to be more creative and push the boundaries of solutions and what they could be. So in a flow state, functional programming can be a uniquely peaceful and forgiving process, often resulting in better solutions. So freedom and additional cognitive overhead allows us to code more fluidly and creatively. And I think Bob would have wanted to code this way. Thank you.